You have to walk up the long road into the zoo, and I could see him from the distance. He was suffering. Elephants are just like we are. They're so family-oriented and emotional. And so I wanted to free him.
They're incredibly intelligent animals. He was just moving back and forth. This behavior is from severe mental or physical neglect.
They need company, they need love and affection.
Kaavan was in a terrible state. It was absolutely shocking.
What does it take to relocate a 5-ton elephant across the entire continent of Asia?
It's a huge challenge.
We put together the right team. We had to get him out.
And when your heart is on the run,
Do you believe in miracles?
I will always be the one to carry you out.
Kaavan's journey really shows the power of people.
I never thought this is something that people would love all over the world.
I will
We just didn't stop fighting.
to carry you home.
I'm Jess Cagle, and this is the official For Your Consideration event for Smithsonian Channel presents Cher and the Loneliest Elephant. It is a remarkable documentary about how Cher and a group of extraordinary people rescued a 35-year-old bull elephant from this terrible zoo in Pakistan. Variety called it a cinematic love song. Vanity Fair has said it's the very definition of essential. And a couple of friends of Cher's also have endorsed it. We'll show you that right now.
Tell me if I'm getting this right. There was an elephant living alone in Pakistan. You found out about this elephant and you helped get it a permanent home in Cambodia. Okay. Who is this elephant and how did you guys become friends? And how did this documentary, Cher and the Loneliest Elephant, come about?
Let's talk about your brilliant documentary, Cher and the Loneliest Elephant. This is such a wonderful story. It is such a brilliant thing that you've done. It really, really is. It's fantastic.
The first person I want to bring in is an executive producer on Cher and the Loneliest Elephant. He's an acclaimed documentary and TV producer who specializes in films about our relationships with animals through his production company, Two Wise Monkeys Entertainment. And among his many, many credits are Werner Herzog's Grizzly Man and Encounters at the End of the World. Welcome and thank you for being here, Phil Fairclough.
Jess, really nice to be here. Thank you.
And now we're going to bring on another executive producer of Cher and the Loneliest Elephant, also one of the title characters of this film. She is probably the most beloved and most talented entertainer in the history of the world, Grammy winner, Emmy winner, Oscar winner, humanitarian, and a speaker of the truth. Cher, welcome.
Thank you. That's a big introduction.
I know, hard to live up to, unless you're Cher.
I've already lived
Are
up to
you-
it. I'm on the wane.
So before we went on, you were saying that you were speaking to Kaavan, the elephant, last night. How was that?
Yeah, it was good. I said I was speaking to him, but I was speaking to Derek, but it seemed like I was speaking to him. He was great. And we've decided that there's 3 girls and that probably the middle girl is the one that really likes him and they might pair up. And Derek was taking these pictures of him, and Derek says that for a bull elephant, he is so calm and gentle, and he's so sweet. But he was so interested in Derek's camera. I don't know if he thought it was something to eat because he thinks everything's something to eat. And so all of a sudden, you would see his trunk just cover the whole camera lens, and he's just very inquisitive. He's very, very inquisitive. But since he left Islamabad, he is a completely different elephant. And I don't know as much about elephants as I need to, but I thought it would take him a long time, or maybe he would never be happy, or he would never be calm. You know, because
If you've
when
seen
he
the,
was
go
when
ahead,
he was
sorry.
in Islamabad, he just is going like this all the time, and people mistake that for happiness or, you know, dancing or whatever, but it's a sign of deep distress and anxiety, and that's how elephants cope with it.
During this conversation, I really want to get into, you know, from the very beginning, how Kaavan ended up at this zoo, share how you spearheaded the rescue, the details of the rescue, which that's the nail biter part of this, and also the challenges, Phil, of making the film. But just to lead us off, you know, Cher, anybody who, you know, was aware of what was happening to Kaavan or saw these photos of him shackled in the Islamabad Zoo would have been heartbroken and shattered by that. Very few people, though, would, even if they had the resources, get on a plane to Pakistan in the middle of a global pandemic like you did.
Yes.
What was it about Kaavan's plight, about his story, that resonated so personally with you?
I have to tell you, it was really, I was responding very late to the kids on my Twitter feed, and they started it, and I thought, well, they'll just stop, and sometimes people get on a, you know, a tantrum, or they have a cause. I mean, that's what we do on my Twitter feed too. We know about stuff, and we're very excited to learn, but they didn't stop. And I was thinking, I don't know anything about this. I'm just an entertainer. I can't save this elephant. But there was a picture of Kaavan with his nose to the edge of this enclosure that he lived in. It wasn't an enclosure. It was just, I don't know. It was horrible, as big as my fingernail. It was about almost just his size. And he just had his head right against the wall with his head down. And I kept looking at it. And then I have a friend, Mark Cowan, and I remember talking to him once. We weren't even friends then. We were just talking. We were just thrown into the wrong cars. And he was telling me, just for conversation, that he had saved all these elephants in Africa. So when I thought I might take a stab at this, I called him and said, "Hi, it's Cher. Remember me? We rode in the car together and blah, 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 blah." And I said, "There's an elephant in Islamabad, and he's very bad. He's sick. And do you think, can you give me any hints or ideas or whatever?" And he said, "I'll go." And like 2 days later, he was there taking pictures and videos, and he walked in. He said, "Unshackle him." He was shackled for 27 years on his back legs. Unshackle him, put some kind of a top over the stupid little, I don't even know what you call it. It was nothing. It was no kind of, you know, structure at all. They did that. He said, "Put water in that round little pool thing and get him some toys." And they did it.
And
And
Phil,
he talked to Kaavan.
oh, sorry, sure, go ahead.
No, it's okay. No, he talked to Kaavan, and he fed him, you know, food, big leaves and stuff like that. Not what he loves. He likes watermelon, but but they had a little bit of a thing. But then later in the documentary, you'll see Kaavan just hit him with his trunk and knocked him ass over tea kettle. You know, like it was really, no, it was kind of funny, but he didn't get hurt, so that was why it was kind of funny.
And Phil, one of the things that we don't see in the documentary is, you know, the challenges of actually making the documentary. And so I want to ask you a lot about that. But just to start off, when did you find out about the story, and then how did you get Smithsonian Channel on board to actually make the documentary?
Well, it was Mark Cowan, who Cher just talked about, who I had worked on another project with Jane Goodall, and he rang me up right at the end of May 2020. So just under a year ago, right in the depths of the pandemic. And he said, Phil, I've got this project with Cher. She's going to move this elephant from Islamabad to Cambodia. Are you in? I said, what do you mean? Like, of course I'm in. I mean, yes, of course, but really? I mean, seriously, Cher's going to do that? And this was the first I had heard of the plight of Kaavan, which, of course, you know, the work to rescue him, which Cher was spearheading, had been going on for a full 5 years with Mark. But so he said, but it's a bit of it's definitely going to happen, but it's a bit of a rush. So what do you mean? He said, well, the Pakistan High Court has ordered the zoo to close and every animal to be released or taken away somewhere else in 30 days. And that's going to happen with you, without you. Cher's going to be there, so you better get your skates on. And I have sold some shows and pretty quickly, but 30 days to get something as difficult as this. I mean, my head immediately went to, well, you know, no one's going anywhere, so how are the logistics of this going to work? But I just thought, well, you know, this is just an amazing story. The mere challenge, you know, the challenge of moving an elephant, a 5-ton elephant, a couple of 1,000 miles, the story that we could tell, and about this project, but the potential to make a difference for what I know, the many, many other Asian elephants in bad situations, to really showcase something good for animals, something good for humanity at a really dark time for humanity. Someone would want this story. So I immediately started hitting the phones. I think maybe the first or second call I made was to Smithsonian, a friend of mine in development at Smithsonian, Chris Herzl. I said, Chris, this is going to sound a little far-fetched, but I told him the story. Cher is going to move an elephant from Pakistan to Cambodia, and we've got to do it in 30 days because the zoo's going to close. Are you in? And he said, yeah. I mean, I have to ask someone else, but you know, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. It was the most quick, positive response I think I've ever had. I obviously wasn't going to just take that yes right there. So I started talking to many other contacts at all the networks and streamers that I thought, you know, might be interested. And funnily enough, almost everyone said, you know, it sounds a bit difficult. I mean, really? Can you do this? Is Cher really involved? You know, someone actually said to me, stars don't really work for us. So I had all these sort of half-hearted or negative or non-responses. And then, sure enough, maybe it was a little longer than 5 minutes, but within an hour, I got the call back, Smithsonian, we're in. And I knew that for a project that was going to be this difficult, that kind of instantaneous gut reaction, they wanted in and they knew how hard it was going to be, but they were in. So it was in the end a very easy decision.
One of the surprising things, and I'm sure that this was probably surprising even to the Smithsonian Channel, is that, you know, celebrities often put their names in front of something like this, but Cher was really boots on the ground. And before we get into, you know, Kaavan's backstory, Cher, one of the weirdest things to me in the documentary was when the Pakistani government said, well, okay, we'll let this elephant go, but only if Cher comes to pick him up. And I thought, yes, they really wanted you to come to Pakistan.
They really did. And I kept saying to my friends, all my friends, I went, am I really going to Pakistan? Are we doing this? And I mean, as we were packing, like, and even the day I was late for the plane, but that morning I kept going, am I really going to Pakistan? Are we really going to Pakistan? Is this really happening? There's a huge pandemic there. I mean, and then I just went, well, yeah, come on, just, you're doing it. Stop playing around and just do it. And I had trepidations and also the weirdest thing, and I swear this is true, I didn't think anybody would be that interested. I mean, it was like my project with, well, Free the Wilds project, which are me and Jen and Mark and Gina and Sagan, but we did the legwork. I'm telling you, like we did so much for 4 years that we were like nursing it along. And there were so many times where we thought it was going to happen and it didn't happen. We went through 2 administrations, and but we just didn't give up. I'm not sure why.
Phil, can you back us up and tell us how did this elephant Kaavan, how did he end up in this godforsaken zoo in the first place?
Yes, well, it's an interesting story. He's from Sri Lanka originally. Was the daughter of the president of Pakistan 35 years ago. President was President Zia al-Haq, and his daughter loved elephants, and she told her dad that she loved elephants. And a few weeks later, he called her in and he said, "I've got a surprise for you, and shut your eyes." And he led her out onto the lawn of the presidential palace. We have some pictures of this, and there was a baby elephant. This was Kaavan. He was less than a year old. So he was brought as a gift for the daughter of the president of Pakistan. And, you know, this was a different era. Animals weren't treated even as well as they are now. They were not considered to have the kind of feelings, emotion, and rights, frankly, that we're now starting to give them. And I'll come back to that because that's one of the really interesting facets of this story. Kaavan eventually was granted what his lawyer said, personhood, which is a pretty amazing thing. But yes, so Kaavan was given as a gift. The daughter wanted to keep him, like in the presidential palace, but they said, no, he's got to go to the zoo. So he was taken to the zoo where he basically spent his whole life. At some point, he had a female, call him a wife, but she was also kept in very miserable conditions. She was chained. She had chains around her ankles, which caused gangrene, and she died. Elephants, as Cher can tell you, suffer in zoos particularly, suffer terribly from foot problems because they're not used to the hard surfaces that they're kept in. Isn't that right, Cher?
Right, they die from that. You know, they have very tender feet. You wouldn't think it. They can be standing on, and they need to be moving all the time too. Elephants can move 40 miles in a day, you know, and so being confined in any small space, just standing, they can die.
Right, and that's really what was happening to Kaavan. His mate, she died, and there's a terribly touching picture where he is reaching out with his trunk to his dead partner, and as this young vet says, you can feel his grief, you can see it, and the other, you know, it's terribly, terribly unnatural to keep an animal that is a highly social, intelligent, emotional, big creature like an elephant, confined, almost unable to move except the length of his chain, in a small enclosure with nothing to do. So that they start to develop this, it's basically sort of terrible boredom. And it manifests itself as this rocking that you see that people would joke and say, oh, he's the dancing elephant. So Kaavan was basically like spent his whole life from babyhood to halfway through his life, because they live as long as us, in solitary confinement, or pretty much solitary confinement. And he was going mad. And thank goodness this campaign began in Pakistan to get him freed. And they eventually got Cher's attention. And that changed everything.
And Cher, when you saw the photos, because the photo that you mentioned earlier of him with his in that tiny space, and also the photo of him, grieving and reaching out with his trunk to Sahili, those photos started going around thanks to people that discovered this and started sharing it on social media. And you said that besides being kind of shattered and moved by those photos, that it really pissed you off.
Yeah, it did. I didn't realize how many elephants I have in this house. I've been collecting elephants for so long, and I didn't realize till I was looking around, and I thought, whoa, God, I've got so many, and I never thought about it. But they have complex emotions. They cry, they huddle, they cuddle, they have grief, they have happiness, they have this family union, and they all stay together forever. So it was so difficult, but I never thought I'd be able to do it, and I didn't think anybody would care. I mean, I was going off with my friends, we were going there, and we were just going to take him from Islamabad to Cambodia, but it's far away in the other part of the world, and I just didn't think anybody would care.
After you mentioned earlier that when you got Mark Cowan involved, and he went there and he got the chains removed, he got the water bowl filled, but there wasn't much else that happened. And then that's when you guys launched Free the Wild. And can you tell me a little bit about what went into that, to that new nonprofit?
Well, we just realized that we were going to need to get a bigger boat, so we decided that would be the charity, and because there's so many more elephants and they just keep coming to us, and also gorillas. So, and it's really expensive to move elephants, 5,000 miles or 3,000 miles or whatever it was. So, and then we had to build a little confine. Well, it wasn't little, but we had to build the space that he's in. And they're building the one that's going to go around the big lake for him and his girlfriend. Knock wood. And so there's so much, and then we were just this teeny brand new baby charity, so we reached out to Four Paws because there were things that he had to have doctor's care. Also, he had to be trained to go in this crate, which was the same size as the place he'd lived. I mean, the place he lived was so small. And when Mark got the chains released, because he'd been chained for like 24 years or 27 years, he didn't move. He didn't know he could move. And then when he found out he could move, he was hesitant to go, and then as he got a little, more steady and wasn't so afraid, but he still rocked constantly. But all of the people from Four Paws, and Dr. Amir especially, they were really great. So we started it. Without us, there wouldn't have been any movement. And then we called them and said, would you come and join us? And so that we can actually move him. And so as we work together as a group, just our lawyer Onas, if it hadn't been for him, he was in court all the time. And so it was a group effort, My friends came with me, and they didn't know why they were coming, but I said, come on, we're going. And it was very, very interesting. My idea of Pakistan I wasn't really sure. And so right before we left, Jen said, do you think we need security? And my brother-in-law's always been my security. I met him through Tina Turner, and then he and my sister got married, and he was a fireman, and he was all these things. So we had met this man in another strange country, and his name was Matt. So Jen just called him and said, do you think we're going to need, a person to go with us? And he like started pulling out his hair and he said, are you crazy? Yes. And we said, well, we've got this much time. And he went, he just blew up. So we did end up taking security, and it was kind of a good thing. And then we went to see him, and he was cute, but I knew that he was in distress because there's an elephant in the LA Zoo that is in distress. And I tried to get him out, but I'm not going to stop trying, Billy. And so I knew what was going on. I knew how much anxiety and how much distress he was in. And so between all of us, we were able to, fill all the gaps. And Mark's wife, Gina, and Sagan, his son, and Jennifer, my right hand, all of us made it happen. And then when we called for pause, it just like got, oh, okay, this is really going to work.
One of the things that I love about the documentary is that we hear a lot of Cher in the documentary. My favorite Cher song, Jesse James, was not in the documentary, but I can listen to that on my own.
No, I was not going there to sing. I hadn't sung in a long time. My voice was really weird. And we sang this awful song that Amir kept singing to him my way, and I couldn't sing it. When Amir chimed in, it was ridiculous because Amir can't sing at all, and only Kaavan would pay any attention to it. So it was a nightmare. And I kept thinking, Cher, you're professional and people are going to see this forever. And this is so stupid. And then I thought, get over yourself. And he likes it. And he loves music, but elephants love music. There was a man that went to, I think it was Africa. I'm not sure. He was a concert pianist and he got tired of it. So he took his piano into the bush and played, and the elephants came. And elephants always move a little bit. They didn't move, and one elephant started crying, and they never moved. And he went there like all the time, and they would, the moment they would hear the piano keys, they would all come.
When you launched Free the Wild, you released a song called Walls. Can you tell me a little bit about? Can we hear a little bit of that song?
Sure.
Cher even records a special song, Walls, about the lonely elephant's plight.
Never thought I'd ever end up like this.
But nothing changes for Kaavan. His diet is terrible. His pen is small and squalid. And worse still, he's alone.
What was the inspiration behind that? What was the message behind that song?
Well, we weren't involved with Kaavan, I don't think yet. Were we? Oh, that's right. We were trying to bring any kind of awareness to his situation. And so my producer, Mark Taylor, he wrote Walls. And it's just about how we built all these walls, and they need to come down because we're supposed to care for these animals. And so it was about the sadness of how we haven't taken care of them. And we did it. We did all these bad things. And so that was what it was about.
And Phil, as Cher mentioned, Four Paws got involved, and you found a sanctuary. The organizations found a sanctuary to take Kaavan in Cambodia, an enormous distance away. Yes. Tell me first of all, the logistics of getting Kaavan from point A to point B, and then tell me the logistics from your standpoint of shooting all of that and capturing it for the documentary.
Right. So the zoo was being closed. Part of the order that the Pakistan when Free the Wild petitioned them to give Kaavan rights, they didn't actually petition to close the zoo, but it was Kaavan. But the court went further and said you have to not just release Kaavan, but close the whole zoo, which was extraordinary. And the logistical problems began right there, which was pretty much when I got involved. And this was, I have a saying in TV, and other producers do, or any, it's Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And then there's another one, which is O'Reilly's Law, and O'Reilly says that Murphy is an optimist. And so this was like, we are deep in O'Reilly Law land here. So Mark calls me. He says we've got a place in Cambodia. The court would not order his release without a place for him to go, which is sensible. And they had discovered this wonderful sanctuary called the Cambodia Wildlife Sanctuary that was started by David Castleman, a businessman lawyer from Los Angeles, and his partner in Cambodia, Sok Hong, Mr. Hong, who has got an extraordinary place in this story.
All right, but Mr. Hong is like the man. Okay, without Mr. Hong, we couldn't have gotten into Cambodia because it was closed.
Right. So logistically, the first step was going to be that Derek Thompson, who Cher spoke about, who is currently in Cambodia looking after Kaavan, he lives in Thailand, and he was going to fly from Thailand to Pakistan to try and bring Kaavan back to Cambodia. Well, and with a team, vets, mahouts, the whole team was going to go from Thailand to Pakistan back to Cambodia, but then he couldn't leave because of COVID. So that was my first, oh no. So plan A doesn't look like that can't happen. I've just pitched the network on this thing that's definitely going to happen. Logistics started to hit us around the head from the first day, practically. So how are we going to fix this? Talked with Mark Cowan, he's in London. My production partner, Mike Kemp, is also in London. How are we going to get who's going to get the elephant out? Mark says, we have this team from Free the Wild, which is an Austrian animal welfare organization with this amazing vet, Dr. Amir. Dr. Amir had just flown from Beirut, where there was that giant explosion, to Islamabad to start getting, preparing all the other animals in the zoo to go to a dozen different places around the globe. So Free the Wild kind of got lucky, but it was very, it was sort of, you make your own luck. Dr. Amir and his team were there. He's the sort of the war vet, and they said, hey, could you help us with Kaavan? And Free the Wild has, infrastructure, but Four Paws has a massive infrastructure. So they were immediately on board with moving Kaavan. But then, okay, you asked the question, how do you move a 5.5 ton elephant anywhere, right? In what and what kind of transportation? Normally, an animal that big would go by road, but it was going to Cambodia. There's no road, from easy road from Pakistan to Cambodia. It's 2,500 miles. He had to fly. At one point, we were talking about the biggest cargo plane on Earth, which is a Russian plane that I believe the price tag for the move was about $1 million. So where are you going to get one of those? So all of these things going on around the production were fully dependent on the mechanics and logistics of what became a huge global logistics operation. So that was going on. Meanwhile, we were all trying to get people across borders, which was really, really difficult. Production crew, my cameraman and director, Jonathan Finnegan, who normally is based in Beijing, he got locked out of China, which was to our advantage because he couldn't go home. So he said, hey, how do you fancy spending probably 6 weeks in Pakistan? We're not quite sure when this is going to happen, but you just go and film it. And he was, he couldn't go home. He had his gear. So we sent him to Pakistan, and he just filmed. So all of this preparation, which maybe we wouldn't have normally been able to afford someone to go for 2 months, that fell into our laps. He then got COVID. I mean, there's so many points at which so many people might have just said, enough is enough. This is too difficult. We can't go forward. We were sort of stymied at every step of the way, but we also managed to find a workaround. But again, we managed to get it done. Smithsonian were fantastic because this was not a small ask. This was a substantial overage, but they just said, sure, yes. And their sort of belief and their support every step of the way. And it's not always that you'll hear a producer praising a network, but without Smithsonian's endless commitment to this, we could not have done it. And the same was true for every single person who was involved in making this happen. This was a logistical campaign as much as it was, in the end, a beautiful creative production.
It was
And
kind
Cher,
of a
when
fly
you
by the seat of your pants. It was a fly by the seat of your pants production.
Really. And those are often the best and the most fun. We were able at the last minute, and this was very much the work of my partner, Mike Kemp, my production partner, another exec producer, who formed a relationship with Mr. Hong in Cambodia, who was able to open an airport a 4-hour drive from the Cambodia Wildlife Sanctuary. This airport had been closed for 6 months and was opened up once and once only for the sole purpose of allowing Kaavan and the team to land there. So remarkable things were made to happen, strings were pulled, everybody pulled together. And Cher can tell you about the moment of relief when the plane, not the world's biggest plane, but the world's sort of second or third biggest plane, landed in Siem Reap Airport. We were able to get the smaller plane, which saved about $500,000 because they put Kaavan on a diet, and the payload was just.
Dr. Amir put him on a diet because they'd been feeding him all the wrong things at the zoo. So he lost what, a half a ton? I think
About 500 pounds, I think.
Okay, well, I don't know what a ton is. So anyway, so I'm dyslexic. So we were able to, but Dr. Amir was getting him in that little crate. Remember, Phil? That little crate, which was about a little bit smaller. It was not the big crate, it was a smaller crate. So to get him in there was a miracle because he'd been chained into this other little place his whole life. So, he was afraid, he was afraid to go in. But Dr. Amir coaxed him with food and talk and, come on, you can do it. And all the guys around were like, come on, you can do it. And he backed out and he went in and they had food at the other side. And he finally got used to it.
But there's one other thing. One more thing.
Yeah, the other thing, the big thing.
The big thing. So again, this was sort of in uncharted territory, deep in O'Reilly land. I get a phone call. Kaavan is in must. Must is a condition of massively increased testosterone that elephants have about once a year. It's actually a little bit more frequent in captive elephants, but it means that it's a mating condition. And it means that the male elephant is extremely aggressive and is ready to fight off. In the wild, it would be other male elephants. So they're angry.
You kind of sees, but in captivity, he sees everything as an enemy. Dr. Mir said you could have been his mahout his whole life and he would just knock you out because he can't control this amount of this surge of testosterone. You know, I think if you saw the thing, you saw him kind of whip Mark like off his feet, and you know, and he liked Mark, but he just couldn't control himself. So we thought, how is this going to happen? This is like, I don't know if there's one more than Riley's Law, but that's where we were.
I don't know. I think O'Reilly's Law is pretty good, but yeah, that was sort of the cherry on the icing on the cake from what else can happen. Oh yeah, so there was a real risk that, you know, he may not have been able to move. All of these windows had to kind of work together, but partly
Also,
because of
just a second, Phil, and also everybody was afraid that if they got him on the transport, that if he got nervous and started to rock around, it would be like, you know, lights out.
yeah. I mean, this isn't something that happens every day. People build a crate to transport a 5-ton elephant, hoping that it's going to be strong enough to contain an angry 5-ton elephant, and then put it on a giant plane and fly for 7 hours, and just fingers crossed it's going to work. So a lot of people, a lot of very brave people, a lot of very smart people made the calculations, put their lives at risk, genuinely, and really did something that I think, even without a pandemic, is pretty unprecedented. And so in the middle of this kind of biggest global issue challenge facing humanity since maybe World War II, the potential for this to show the power of individuals who can to change things, to show the goodness of people, to do something that could change the mindsets of people for animals was, you know, why did we continue? Because of that. And frankly, the story has the power, and why I believe it's such a sort of great, I'm so happy to be associated with it, but it has the power to change people's minds, and to show that, you know, good can triumph. But yeah,
I think there was another thing. I think there was another thing that really helped us, because Imran Khan became the prime minister, and is it the prime minister?
Mhm.
Anyway, so, but Imran became the head of the country, and I knew him, and he didn't think that Kaavan should be kept in captivity. So he was so much help to us.
Cher, what was it like?
Sorry,
Go ahead. Well,
I was going to echo what Cher said. I think a lot of credit must go to Pakistan for making this possible, for letting Kaavan go. And, you know, there's no knock on that country and the people of that country. This was a wonderful thing that happened.
No, for
And
them
they love
to
Cher.
let us have him, well, for the people of Pakistan to let us have him, it was, you know, they didn't think of themselves. They thought of what was best for him.
Cher, what was it like when you got to Islamabad the first time and met? Because it had been 4 years of you focused on the rescue of Kaavan. What was it like meeting the elephant for the first time?
Well, it was strange too, because I'd wished we'd met alone for the first time, but then of course it wouldn't have been very good for the special. But when I saw him from far away, and I was like kind of jittery, but when I got up close to him, and I thought, whoa, he's really big, and he's a small elephant, but he's just so big. And then I saw him swaying, and I felt, oh, this is just in time. But he's a sweet elephant, and his beautiful eyelashes.
And what was it like to see him? Because it was then from Islamabad to Cambodia, 7-hour flight, as Phil was saying, then another 4-hour, drive. He could be sedated a little bit, but not so sedated that he would lay down, because he had to stand up the whole time. So at the end of that whole journey, Cher, you were waiting for him in Cambodia. And what was it like to see Kaavan arrive at his new home?
It was amazing. It's like when I talk to my friends, all these friends that came with me, we've all done a lot of things, and none of us have ever had an experience like this. And we were so excited. I was so excited. And I was also so thankful that he made the trip. You know, you're transporting a 5-ton elephant, claustrophobic elephant across, you know, thousands of miles. And he was very photogenic. But he's very sweet. You know, he's very sweet. He was mistreated, but his nature is very sweet. And even Derek said to me, he's this very, very calm, sweet elephant, unlike most bulls. And I was thinking, yeah, that's my boy. But I was so excited. And when they backed him down, and I thought, oh, and he didn't kill anybody. They didn't crash, and he's here. And then we took pictures. Like, people came from nowhere, and Mr. Han came, and he was very sweet. And I didn't know at the time that without him, I didn't know all the things he was doing. It's like, he's the man in Cambodia. If you want anything done, you have to find him. And so genteel, very, very nice. And so then we got in the car and then followed him. And I think it was closer to 5 hours. Everybody keeps saying 4, but I think it's 5. And then we started going. And then we met Derek there, and Derek jumped on the flatbed and was like walking around. But I mean, it's going that we're going, and he's just holding on to things that are like you're not supposed to hold on to these things because they're just so tenuous. And he was talking to Kaavan and soothing Kaavan. And so Kaavan had this extra help on the last part of the journey.
What kind of impact, Phil, has the film had on conservation in general? It definitely is something, you know, because it's a very well told story because of, you know, Cher's presence in it. I feel like a lot of people have learned about the issue of elephants in captivity through this program.
Well, there's a number of very positive effects. And truthfully, we wanted this film to do more than just tell this incredible story. Because, you know, it's hard to get people's attention for the many, many, many needy causes and animals and people causes that, you know, everybody's looking to support. So we were determined really that this could do more than just tell Kaavan's story, but that it would shine a light on some of the wider challenges for Asian elephants in particular. I mean, there's a general sort of perception that I think a lot of people have that Asian elephants, because we've all seen them, you know, moving logs around and people riding them in jungles and then painting pictures. And we've all thought, they look like they're having a good time, or they're our happy human companions. And that is simply not true, because every single one of those elephants has been through a more or less horrific training process that takes the baby from its mother at a young age and basically tortures it into submission so it will do our bidding. And that was the story of Kaavan, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other elephants in Asia that have, you know, suffered terribly. In fact, Cher went to this exquisite temple, Angkor Wat, which is near Siem Reap. It's one of the, you know, it's known as the 8th wonder of the world. And
but it was built by elephants, and many of them died. Most of them died. So it's a beautiful place, but it's got a history.
Yeah, it's got a dark history. And to Cambodia's great credit, they've sort of recognized this and have stopped doing elephant rides at Angkor Wat. So, I mean, that wasn't because of the film, that happened before the film. But as a direct result of the film now, other places, other countries, other people with captive elephants have started to kind of offer them up. I believe the Sultan of Brunei wants to bring an elephant to Cambodia. There's elephants from Israel, elephants from France. It had an immediate effect on people's sort of desire to do the right thing for elephants. And then I think in a wider sense, I know that Cher and Free the Wild are looking to do other work for other animals, not just elephants, and to kind of expand on this, you know, really great piece of work to work with. You know, there's a gorilla in a shopping mall in Thailand. There are animals in other elephants in places that they shouldn't really be. So there's a lot of, you know, a lot of positive uplift, I think, for, you know, people who suddenly can see, wow, I know Cher got involved with this, but really it started with the kids on Twitter. They could do that, we could do that. And I think this has really, really got the potential to save and help a lot of animals.
And you know, I get pictures every day, and you know, photographs and video, and there, you know, like in Japan, there's an elephant suffering, and I mean, there's elephants suffering in so many places, Lucy and Nosy, and just they go on, and we just keep getting more and more. But we you know, we're not a big charity yet, so we're trying to get funds, and because it's expensive doing this, you know, and so if we try to do, you know, many elephants as we're trying to do, it's not that easy. But it wasn't that easy this time, so we did it. I don't believe in the word no, so you know, that's just the way I've lived my life. But yes, these animals have to be, you know, let go. And there's an elephant that lives in Canada, and it's not right.
Lucy.
Because there's snow. Lucy, yeah, there's snow, and they're not supposed to be in snow, you know. And I would think that, you know, the people of Canada are really nice, kind people. I've spent so much time there. So there, you know, there are things that we need to change. Places where elephants are in as small cages as Kaavan, and it's just, they'll have, many of them die. I mean, so many elephants die in zoos, you know, but all they want is an elephant because people want to see an elephant. The elephant is the money, you know, they're the money, you know, when you go to see them, that's what people want to see. But I have an idea about a virtual zoo that I'm working on, but we have to let people know, we have to get this in their minds that it's not, they're seeing something that they have a feeling about, but it's not the truth. And these elephants and these animals, all of these animals are suffering, you know. It's just, I mean, I know sometimes people sound like, you know, they're crazy about, you know, I was never an activist, you know. I had animals, but I never thought that I would be an activist, and I'm not exactly sure I'm an activist. I just want to help these animals. I want to help people too, you know. I do both. But Free the Wild is doing wonderful things, and we need help, and but we want to continue, you know, because animals are so mistreated.
There's one thing that I'd love to add to this, which is that we all pretty much love nature. When you look at the exquisite images of nature from the BBC or Netflix, we see these exquisite scenes of animals in beautiful places. We're in danger of thinking that all is right with the world. It's actually really hard to get people to pay attention to what's wrong with the world and what's wrong for animals and the conditions. It's really difficult to make a film that a broadcaster wants to show and the audience wants to watch about animal suffering. It's very, very difficult. The fact that we were able to do this with Cher, to make a film that was enjoyable, that had drama, emotion, laughter, tears, and a happy ending is rare. And again, to go back to the broadcaster Smithsonian, their commitment to telling that story, that is unusual, and that's what I think makes this film so important. It's not the greatest natural history film you've ever seen, but no one's been able to crack the code of taking something that is a dark story and make it palatable and important and enjoyable. And thanks to Cher, for a lot of things, including the music, the inspiration, the title, Cher and the Loneliest Elephant, that was her title. I decided early on, it was a good decision, that I should probably pay attention to Cher's role as an exec producer, not just because it was Cher, but because she's been doing this a long time and she knows how to get through to people.
Also, there were a lot of really bad titles, Phil. I was like,
You didn't.
Whoa, are you crazy? I'm not. That's not working for me.
Well,
It's a perfect title.
Right. I mean, if my name has got to be in it, it's got to be in it in a little bit better way, And of course, I got top billing, but he's an elephant. He couldn't do anything.
Thank you for your efforts, and congratulations on the documentary. I hope that it raises awareness and also inspires a lot of other people to join the cause. And also, just as a viewer, watching a bunch of people from all over the world of different political persuasions and different colors and religions all gathering together to do something so selfless was a really, really nice thing to see right now. And it's so well done. Thank you both for taking the time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. See ya.
Bye, Phil.